again this year. Thank you to Matt and Mercy for having us again. Everybody knows that Mark and I love coming here and love being with you. This year, we're going to include in our conversation a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Deckelhen. Jonathan, if you can come out and join us, please. Jonathan's son, Sagi, is a hostage in Gaza. He is one of the 6 American Israelis who's being held at the hands of the terrorist organization Hamas. Jonathan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to visit with Jonathan for a couple. We're going to visit with Jonathan, and he's going to share with us what is something I don't think any of us has ever had to relate to. So let's jump in because we don't have a lot of time. You moved to Israel when you were 18, I believe.
Yes.
Tell us what made you move to Israel, and then a little bit about your family.
Well, I grew up in Connecticut, not terribly far from here, in a small town. And a small town that had a small Jewish community, but very together community, made up in great part of Holocaust survivors. And my parents both were Holocaust survivors. And a very Zionistic community. And in fact, a fairly good number of sons of Bloomfield, Connecticut, wound up moving to Israel in their youth and staying and helping to build the country. And I also fell in love very quickly with this idea of a kibbutz, a cooperative farm that is really a very tight community, but also, in using the terms that our founding father, David Ben-Gurion, used, made the desert bloom. And so by 1981, 82, I was already in Israel, very quickly got drafted into the Army and served for many years. I served in reserve duty until fairly recently, actually. And by 1985, having lived on a kibbutz for several years, met my woman who was going to be my wife and started having kids. And so I've raised 4 now adult children on a kibbutz. And fortunately for me, 2 of those grown kids, after they got married, decided to come back and live on our kibbutz near Oz, which is on the border of Gaza, about a mile. My home was approximately a mile from the border fence of Gaza, right in front of Khan Yunis, which, as we know from the news, is a real anchor of the Hamas terrorist organization. Along the way, my day job for many, many years was working on the farm as the director or the head of our agricultural machinery department. A kibbutz, if nothing else, is a hyper-productive agricultural farm that, as I said, made the desert bloom. We kind of invented irrigation in many respects. And so until October 7th was really an idyllic existence. I was tight with this extended family, about 400, a little over 400 people lived on the kibbutz, from infants all the way up to senior citizens, supporting one another. In a way, realizing the Zionist dream of both defending borders, which we most certainly did, and also serving as part of the breadbasket of Israel. And along the way, I had other horizons, but still, while being a member of the kibbutz, went off to professional academics. And today, I'm a professor of history at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
I see. And I remember when we spoke, you described the kibbutz as a paradise, a registered botanical garden, if you will. October 7th changed that. Walk everybody here through what happened on that day. You actually happened to be in the States for a wedding in Baltimore, which is not that far from where we are sitting. Tell us about that day.
Well, October 7th, in fact, yes, I was on my way with my wife to a wedding in Baltimore, heading towards an academic conference the next day. And we were woken up very early by a friend of ours in Rhode Island who had seen the news that in our region of Israel, along the border with Gaza, there was chaos was breaking out, and she asked us what was going on. I, of course, had no idea, and immediately looked at our internal kibbutz communication system, which is on our cell phones, kind of hyper-modern, saw that, in fact, people were crying out for help. And that would have been around 12:30 in the afternoon, Israel time. I'm also a member of the kibbutz security team, first responder team, and so I was also seeing the communication between our civilian first responders, and had quickly seen that as of 9:30 in the morning, they weren't responding anymore. I called home to my son Sagi's home. I was unable to get into contact with either him or his wife. His wife at that moment, 7 months pregnant with 2 little girls. I was able to get in contact with his son-in-law, one of my daughter's husband, who at that very moment was exchanging fire with Hamas terrorists in and around their home, sheltering in our attached bomb shelters with their 2 young boys and 3 guests who happened to be there, and my ex-wife, the mother of my kids, who is one of the 2 women from the kibbutz who were able to escape captivity on that day, and somehow heroically was able to crawl her way back through our fields to get to the family. And she was bleeding out at the time, but they were able to save her, and eventually, and today she's fine, thank goodness. Yeah.
And her story is quite incredible, because as I understand, she was being taken off to Gaza. An IDF helicopter, am I right, was...
A group of about 10 people were being taken away by Hamas terrorists, women and children, on a stolen kibbutz tractor with a wagon. And they had been followed while driving. Again, this is a mile, no more than a mile. They had been driving through one of the roads going towards Gaza, and an Israeli Apache helicopter fired on them, killed the terrorists, but everyone else was thrown off the wagon. A dear friend of ours was killed, friendly fire, at that moment. My ex-wife played dead, actually, and the rest of the hostages were taken. All of them have been released since, with the women and children that were released in late November, early December. But she, heroically, somehow or another, while playing dead, intermittently was able to crawl her way back to the kibbutz.
So walk us through. Sagi was out there that morning, and what did he see? And tell us since then what's happened.
Yes, Sagi is one of my 2 sons. And Sagi woke up early that morning, as he usually did on Saturdays and holidays, to go work on one of his pet projects, which is to refurbish old buses into usable objects. And he grew up alongside of me at the machine shop. He's very good with his hands. And he went off to our metal shop to refurbish 4 buses to become mobile classrooms, STEM classrooms. And he immediately saw at 6:30 in the morning a group of terrorists, well-armed, well-trained, moving through the kibbutz. He and some other people who were up early put out the alarm to everyone to shelter in place and for the security team to come out. Over the course of the next 2 hours, what they realized it was not just one group of terrorists. It was around 200 heavily armed, what they call themselves Nukhba commandos, Hamas commandos, accompanied by several hundred civilian looters. Some of them armed, most of them not. Everything from grannies to little children. For 2 hours or so, our brave young and not so young men did what they could to defend the kibbutz. They were overwhelmed by about 8:30. All the time waiting for our army, the IDF, to arrive, which never did. It's a question that will have to be answered later on, why they weren't there. At around 8:30, Sagi went back to his home to ensure that his wife, Avital, and the 2 girls were safely inside of the bomb shelter, locked in. He then exited again and continued engaging with terrorists in and around his home. His whole home was shot up, full of grenade shrapnel. Miraculously, his wife and daughters survived. He was taken at around 9:30 in the morning on October 7th and has not been heard from since. We have some testimony of people who, of the 100 hostages that were released in late November, about 40 of them were from my kibbutz, women and children. Some of them saw him and other people from the kibbutz in the tunnels under Khan Yunis. So we know that as of late November, he was alive, but we also know that 40 of our community were murdered on October 7th, and a total of 80 taken captive. So that is the state of affairs as of now. On that same day, our homes were destroyed. Those several hundred looters that I told you about, they stole everything from my grandkid's tricycle up to our largest farming tractors. Whatever they couldn't take with them, they burned. And so this paradise in the desert that I lived on for the better part of 40 years and grew kids, I invested my life there, it no longer exists, really. And at some point may be rebuilt. It's questionable whether anyone will actually want to return there.
It's a horrific, horrific experience. And Avital has since given birth to a very healthy baby girl. I actually saw a video of her in the hospital giving birth. It was most difficult. It was at the same time the joy of life, and yet her own husband is not there to share this with her. We know that this is so, so difficult for you, and I have no doubt Mark and I pray every day for the release of the hostages, and everybody in this room shares in that prayer with you. In a moment, thank you. In a moment, I'm going to ask CPAC to put up on the screen a website that everyone should take note of and go to, because each and every one of us in this room does have a role to play. We can be ambassadors for these 136, Sagi, plus the others, and you can see photos up there now of some, there's Sagi right there. Go to the website. It gives you tools on how to reach out to your members of Congress. We have to keep the thought and prayers of these people. Mark and I and others are wearing these dog tags, if you will, that say bring them home. We encourage you also to go to the website and buy these. All the proceeds go to the families. They need our support. And what it does is it raises awareness, because people will ask you, what is it you're wearing? And it gives you the opportunity to speak where these young men and women, and not so young men and women, cannot have a voice. Tell us in the last couple minutes that you're with us here how, in your head, these people can be ambassadors.
Well, of course, it's a great suggestion to have people go to that website, and there are many options. I feel blessed by being here and feeling the partnership from your community to ours. But even within partnerships, sometimes friends have to say unpleasant things to other friends. And it's become, sadly, difficult for most of the hostage families as of late, that it seems as if our own government, the Israeli government, isn't prioritizing the lives of the hostages as it should within its general war effort. I've lived on the border with Gaza since 1982. I lived through rocket attacks, mortar attacks, sniper fire, anti-tank fire, you name it. No one needs to explain to me or any of the other people from our communities how much Hamas needs to be destroyed. That's agreed. But if I could ask for your partnership in this, to reach out to your Israeli partners, to emphasize to them that there cannot be a victory for any of us over Hamas without getting these 136, we hope, Israeli hostages home alive. And that means that as much action needs to be had to get them home alive as needs to happen for the destruction of Hamas. Both things have to happen.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here. I don't know, perhaps technical difficulties. The website is Bring Them Home. Please go to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Our prayers are with you. Oh, that's extremely humbling and difficult.
Imagine having your son kidnapped by these barbarians, and yet coming here to talk about it, to try and explain it. It's a remarkable person that can do that. I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, to our media. You're doing a lot of damage to these people. When you spew when you spew the propaganda of the Hamas Nazi terrorists, you give them hope. They quote you, CNN. They quote you, New York Times. They quote the River to the Sea crowd. We hear them quoting because there are English interpreters telling us what the Hamas leaders are saying. You're giving aid and comfort to a bloodlust ideology that would just as soon burn our country down as burn their country down. This is an ideology. This is a fundamentalist Islamist ideology. And under their fundamentalist Islamist ideology, anybody who doesn't agree with them must be slaughtered, including Muslims, by the way. We're slaughtering each other as I speak. That's number one.
And Christians.
Number two, the Jewish ancestral home is there, and the Christian ancestral home is there. Jesus was born there. Jesus was murdered there. The church sepulchre is there. Bethlehem is there, now majority controlled by the Palestinians. Hebron is there, where Abraham's buried, the patriarchs, most of the matriarchs. And the Palestinian says, it's all theirs. That's what river to the sea means. But I believe in river to the sea. I believe river in the sea shouldn't have one damn Hamas survivor, period. Not one. But I want to move to America. We are not here, media, to burn down our country. We're not here, media, to end democracy. You're doing a pretty damn good job of that. We are here to defend our country, to preserve our Constitution, and preserve our liberty. That's what we conservatives do. You want to talk about dictatorships? Let's talk about dictatorships. When is the last time Joe Biden ever spoke positively of the Constitution of the United States? When is the last time he could actually cite the Declaration of Independence? When's the last time a liberal ever talked about individual liberty or property rights or God-given rights? They're all there in the Declaration of Independence. They never talk about it, ever, because they don't believe in it, that's why. This is a battle between good and evil. Good and evil. We're good, they're evil. You know why we want to preserve our culture? The American culture, which combines all cultures into an American culture, because it's the greatest culture on the face of the earth. Americans aren't swarming into other countries. People in other countries are swarming into America. Don't you get it? It's because America is the greatest country on the face of the earth, the greatest culture on the face of the earth. And no matter what you call us, your damnable lies, mouthpieces for the Democrat Party, mouthpieces for Hamas, you're not going to change a damn one of us. Not one of us. We are not going to give up. Our ancestors fought for this country. My ancestors fought for this country. We talk about World War II. We talk about Europe. My ancestors shed blood in Europe. My ancestors shed blood all through Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Guam. I don't need lectures from some candy ass at CNN about how we defend our country. I can tell you that. We are not isolationists. Why? Because the enemy's not an isolationist. We're not pacifists. Why? Because we're not stupid. That's why. We lived through World War II. We were attacked when we were isolationists and pacifists. And it cost us 450,000 American lives. World War II. And it cost other people millions of lives. We're not funding our military. Instead, we're funding something called climate change, socialism. We're not supporting our cops. Instead, we're funding illegal aliens. We're not securing the border. Instead, we're allowing anybody to flow into this country who's not been vetted, and of course the enemy's going to send in spies and terrorists. We now have new gangs we never heard of before. That's not on us. That's on you, Democrats. That's on your party, and that's on your ideology. They love to talk about a free press. I wish we had one. Free press. That Constitution you hate, that First Amendment, that's what secures your damn ass. And you hate the Constitution and the men who wrote it? How dare you? How dare you? Everything we have in this country, everything we have in this country is a result of the Revolutionary War. It's a result of the Constitutional Convention. It's a result of the Civil War. We've had our problems. We have fought through our problems. Blood, sweat. The biggest battle where we had the most casualties was the Civil War to end slavery. No other nation on the face of the earth had a civil war to end slavery. We did that. And we're not going to be fooled. That little state of Israel, those people want to live. They want to be free. They want to be left alone. God put those people there 5,000 years ago. There were no Palestinians there. In fact, the word Palestinian, media, was invented in 1965 by Arafat. The Jews used to be called the Palestinians. The Palestinians of Palestine. Now, all of a sudden, they're the Palestinians. They're Arabs. That's what they are. That's okay. But they're Arabs. And they had a homeland. It was called Jordan. Jordan. You want a second state? There it is. It's called Jordan. That king has the nerve to come into our country, stand next to our imbecile. That's right, he's an imbecile. To stand next to him. Well, look, it's official now. Didn't the prosecutor say he's an imbecile? Yes. Didn't the Attorney General appoint the prosecutor? Yes. I'm supposed to ignore in so many words, okay, he's an imbecile. I got it. Fine. All right, so, and we all know he is, but he's dangerous. He's issuing executive orders against the Jewish indigenous peoples in Judea and Samaria. Since when does a president issue executive orders that extend outside of our country and are specifically targeting people like Jews? What kind of a person does something like that? Or he's telling them they must have a second two-state solution.
You know who does that? An anti-Semite does that.
What's with this two-state solution? Oh, yes. And you have to give up your home. You have to give up a little town called Shiloh. You ever heard of Shiloh? That's really where Judaism began. Before the city of David and before Jerusalem.
Our first capital.
The first capital, all the tribes came together. That's where they came together. Biden says, I don't care, give it to the Palestinians. I don't care, give Judea and Samaria to the Palestinians. The peaceful Palestinians. Where is the leader of the peaceful Palestinians? Will he please present himself so I can interview him?
I can tell you. His name is Abbas, and he is paying terrorists to kill Israelis under a program called Pay to Slay. And I can also tell you that America First Legal has sued the Biden administration for violating the Taylor Force Act. Go ahead.
And Taylor Force was an American citizen, a veteran, a West Point graduate. The peaceful Abbas Palestinians murdered him. Donald Trump said, that is enough of that. He cut off funding to the PLO. He cut off funding to UNRWA that works with Hamas. He cut off Iran and put his foot on their throat. He cut them all off. Iran was on its back. Hamas was starving to death. The PLO was in its little cage. And then comes Biden, the arsonist. Lights up the whole damn Middle East. Sends our troops there for sitting ducks. I don't even know why they're there right now. Iran, through its proxies, murder 3 of our citizens. And what's his response? Does he hit Iran? No. What did Reagan do when they hit one of our freighters? He destroyed half their Navy. What did Trump do when he said that's enough? He took out Soleimani. What does Biden do? He wants to take out Bibi Netanyahu, and he's attacking the Israelis. This is serious. And I understand this gentleman here. Nobody's suffering like him. And he raises good questions about how this happened. And they need to pursue it, and they need to figure it out. And I don't blame him. If that was my son, I'd move heaven and earth. Because these people are not just kidnappers. They're torturers. They're sadistic. They're rapists. And I'll just say one last thing. There was a report put out last week. I couldn't even read it. About what was done to these people at that festival. The devil himself couldn't come up with ideas like this. Women were murdered with weapons stuck up their genital, up their anus. They were shot. Their breasts were cut off, and they were playing catch with them. They were mass raping these young girls, murdering them while they were raping them. So I would say to the media in this country, how come you're here and you're not over there reporting? Why is that? Some of you were over there and you're actually helping the Hamas on October 7th.
I was just going to add,
somebody just got a Pulitzer Prize for it.
And the Associated Press just got sued for having some reporters embedded on October 7th.
So they knew it was happening.
Witnesses to this genocide.
So I say this on the moral equivalency stuff, name one IDF soldier who would ever even think about doing that to any human being. They're not raised that way. It's not a culture of death, it's a culture of life. And I want to say one final thing, we're out of time. Most of you aren't Jewish. Most of you are Christians. And as a Jew, I can't thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough. The Judeo-Christian belief system is what founded this country, whether the media likes it or not. And that's why we have the freedoms we have, that's why we have the principles that we have, that's why we have the Constitution that we have. Never forget it. Every person that comes to this country, regardless of their faith, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, or what have you, you thank the people of Christianity who founded this nation. Oh, there were Jews and others, but you thank. And I'll say one last thing. You ever go to Arlington Cemetery? It's crushing. Row after row after row after row after row of American. Brave young men and women. Star Davids, some others, the crest. The overwhelming majority of them are crosses. The overwhelming majority of them are white. The overwhelming majority of them are men. If I hear one more damn time about the white, Christian, privileged citizen, you drag your asses over to Arlington Cemetery and you tell those people that.